All right, welcome everybody to another daily dose. It is good to be with you again this morning. I have a couple of updates on several things. First of all, Bob was a little concerned about the phrasing of the message last night. Bev is doing much better this morning. I say much better. She's doing better than she was. She's in a lot of pain, so be praying for Bev. The family just meant they didn't want calls last night because they were getting calls from the doctor and they didn't want everything to be clear. So they're happy to receive calls now. So Bob wanted me to make sure everybody knew that because maybe I didn't phrase it well last night. So be praying for Bev. Ralph is back at home. They thought it was just a bad response to the chemo. He was in a lot of pain, so they have another appointment set to sort of start to manage some of that. So be praying for Ralph as well. Elmer's funeral service, will be Monday at 2 p.m. at the Stump Funeral Home in Bartlesville. So be aware of that if you want to participate or go be a part of that as well. So that's the updates I have for the people right now. There's a lot of things going on, of course, in the congregation. Be praying for people. Be encouraging. We can send cards and calls and texts and keep praying for Charlene, whose surgery is coming up, and of course Corey Tugwell and Corey Schoonover. So a lot of people that we're praying for. Please keep praying for them. Please keep encouraging them as we continue to muddle through our current circumstance. So we are going to be in 3rd John this morning. I do not know what we're doing next week. I have not decided yet. Nobody's given me any suggestions at all. So we'll see what happens over the weekend. One other thing I wanted to announce. If you're watching this, it is a good chance that you're watching the videos on Sunday morning. If you are watching the videos on Sunday morning, you're not coming to worship, you're streaming Bible class. If you go to the church website, under a new section called Media, at the top you'll see the thing, or maybe it's at the corner if you're using your phone. You can download the notebook that we're using, the PDF for the notebook that we're using, and you can follow along with our class in Acts. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of that. If you go to the church website, there'll be a link in the video description. So just be aware of that if you're following along on Sunday morning. Now, let's talk about 3rd John. There's going to be a lot of repeated ideas today. 3rd John is a repetition of a lot of the same stuff we've seen in 1st and 2nd John. 3rd John is a letter addressed to an individual, not a group. And you get the sense, John writes these letters to the people, and this one is more of a personal one that he's sort of, it's possible he sort of included it in a package with the letter for the church and then the letter for the individual. That's happened in other places in the New Testament. So this is a letter to an individual. This is a letter, has a lot of the same themes. There's one sort of different theme, which we'll talk about. This is a letter really about how the church handled and dealt with, sounded like a little bit like 2nd John, how the church handled and dealt with missionaries and these traveling preachers. I don't know, missionaries may not be the right term, but I think they were evangelizing. But these people who would go around preaching from place to place, traveling around like Paul did. And of course, they're learning the model from Paul, right? We talked about this on Tuesday. And how the church responds to these people who come and they want to teach and they want to preach and they want to be an encouragement to the church. We don't have this model as much today. We just don't. It's not the way that we typically do things. I did think of an example is when a youth group might travel with someone to go. I think we had it's church in Winfield. Winfield had a group from Edmond come up to put on a VBS. And that would be a similar thing, right? A group of Christians, they go to a different place and they put on the VBS for a week and then, of course, it's the local people who are going to follow up on that. And I think it would have been a similar thing to that, maybe a little bit, but it's a different sort of thing than what we do, and it just is what it is. So let's dive into the text in 3rd John. 3rd John 1 through 4. The elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health, as it goes well with your soul. For I rejoiced greatly when the brothers came and testified to your truth, as indeed you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. We see the same thing, right? So these traveling preachers, these traveling teachers, they went and they preached and they taught, and they saw how well Gaius was doing. And then they went back to John and they said, hey, John, Gaius is doing really well. And John's like, yay. So this idea of reporting and sort of checking up on people and making sure that people are doing okay. And John, of course, is asking that he'd be in good health as it goes well with your soul. There is sort of a double thing here. He's hoping that Gaius is going to be healthy, but he's hoping that Gaius is going to be healthy spiritually, right? Gaius? Maybe it's Gaius. Gaius, I don't know. Either way. He's hoping that this guy's going to be healthy spiritually, right? And again, similar idea to 2 John rather. I have no greater joy than to hear my children are walking in truth. I don't know that this is necessarily his physical child, but his spiritual child, the people that he's mentored, the people that he cares for, the people that he loves, right? It warms John's heart to hear that the people that he had mentored are walking in the truth, as I think it should be for us. I think about the young people who have graduated recently and they're going off and they're starting their lives away from us, and it's very sad, but if we hear that they're doing well, that they're thriving in their churches and they're thriving in their service to God, that I think would really allow me to empathize with John here, to have that joy to hear that the children are walking in the truth. We keep reading in 3 John 1, 5 through 8. Beloved, it is a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers. These are the travelers, right? Those who went and preached and testified before you. Strangers as they are, who testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey in a manner worthy of God. For they have gone out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support people like these, that we may be fellow workers for the truth. A couple of interesting things about here. And I think the analogy most apt is probably missionaries today. Like I said, that the sort of the traveling. There was a time in America where we had the traveling preacher. We just don't have it as much now, culturally speaking. The closest analogy is probably missionaries, right? People that are traveling to other places to preach. That's the core of this idea. People who are traveling to other places to testify and to minister and to teach the truth. That's what this is talking about. And what Paul, I knew I was going to do that because we've been talking about, anyway, what John wanted Gaius, let's go with Gaius. What John wanted Gaius to do was what? And a couple of things. Send them on their journey in a manner worthy of God. We should be, therefore we ought to support people like these. And his point, they have accepted nothing from the Gentiles. They're not getting paid by other people, right? This is a work of the church, that they would be able to just go do this thing, and they don't need to worry about money. They're not having a regular job. They're not just going and working somewhere. They're going to service, to perform services for the church. They're going to preach and teach and evangelize, we ought to. So John says we ought to support people like these. And it's interesting, when we support people like these, the missionaries that we support, the people that we're sending out, we become fellow workers with them. And this is a general universal truth, right? There are many different facets of the work of truth. There are the people who go and the people that support, the people that go and the people who preach, right? And this is one way that the people who are not doing that sort of missional work, the one way that we can participate and be fellow workers in that is to support them. Now, the contrast, of course, we keep reading in 3 John 1. The contrast in 3 John 1, 9 through 10. Oop, I just had a... Anyway, I got a phone call. I'll check it in a minute. The contrast, 3 John, 1, 9 through 10. I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. Who's our there? John, the other apostles, maybe it's John and these other traveling preachers, right? So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing. talking wicked nonsense against us. And not content with that, he refuses to welcome these people that we were talking about, right? He refuses to welcome the brothers and also stops those who wants to and puts them out of the church. So the opposite of what John wants Gaius to do, welcome these people, support them in their work, support them in their efforts to teach people. Diotrephes was the opposite of that. He didn't want anything to do with these people. He didn't want anything to do with what they had to say. And the people who did want to support these missionaries, these traveling preachers, he wanted those people put out of the church too. And why would somebody do that? And I think you really have a power trip going on here, right? Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority being John and the other apostles and these preachers. And it's interesting, if you're not acknowledging John's authority, John who is an apostle, if you're not acknowledging John's authority, what are you even doing in the church? This guy, Diotrephes, I think clearly had probably built up himself in the local congregation as the authority. I'm the one that you should don't listen to these guys. Don't listen to the John and these guys who are coming, these preachers. Don't listen to them. I think Diotrephes has probably built up himself and built up his own ideas and his own doctrine and his own teaching, and he really wanted to take over, I think, the church to sort of conform it to his image. And so these traveling preachers, he knows they're not going to say stuff that lines up with what Diotrephes is saying. These traveling people, these people that are coming in, they're going to teach the truth, and I don't want people to hear that, so let's get these guys out of here, and if you support them, then you should be out of here too. Now, it's interesting, how did one guy accumulate so much influence in the local congregation? And I think there's a couple of ways this happens. The big one is money. Maybe Diotrephes was the wealthy dude, and he wanted to have control. And so the way that he had control is he told people, if you don't listen to me, then I'm going to stop giving to the church. I've seen that happen in congregations, where one person is providing most of the funds because they happen to be wealthy, and that affords them the opportunity to dictate the way the church goes, because they just say, if you don't do what I want, then I'm going to stop giving, and then you'll have no money. So maybe that's what happened with Diotrephes. Maybe it was something more, I don't know. You think about ways that could happen. Maybe he just had a very powerful personality, and he had swayed people away, and once he built up a majority of people who were following him, then they had enough power. I don't know how this happens, but this happens in modern churches too, doesn't it? This happens in churches today, where somebody gets an idea in their head that's contrary to truth, and they build up a following, they build up people who want to listen to them, and then it's very easy for them to prevent truth from being taught. And this is how churches die. And what does John say about this? So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us. And of course, John had written something to the church, but Diotrephes probably was blocking that from being read. And it was the responsibility of those who are still faithful to either, and it's hard to know what John wants done here. Did he expect Gaius to sort of throw Diotrephes out? And how did that happen if there was a lot of people supporting him? Or either way, John wants us, those who are faithful, to stand up for truth. And maybe it would have resulted in they had to form another group. It's hard to know in circumstances how this would have played out. But this was very clearly a struggle that was happening in wherever Gaius was. We keep reading. Actually, I think this is the end of the book. 3 John 1, 11 through 12. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. And this is the contrast between Gaius, who welcomed the brothers, welcomed the truth, welcomed the teaching, and Diotrephes, who is self-inflated and didn't want anything to do with truth. Imitate Gaius, not Diotrephes. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. We also add our testimony, and you know that our testimony is true. And I think that's the end. Yeah, that is the end. So, conclusion, the end of the triune letters of John, 1st and 2nd and 3rd John, little Johns, as Loy would have called them, as opposed to Big John, the gospel. The conclusion. What do we see? Common threads. Love of truth, desire for truth, obedience, rejoicing in fellowship, and fellowship that is based on common truth, right? We have this fellowship. We want people to understand the fellowship that we have. but that stems from the love of truth and submitting to the authority of the apostles, which is ultimately what Diotrephes was not doing. So as we think about this in our circumstance, supporting those who are doing the work, who are preaching and teaching, supporting them is participating in that work, but then also standing up for the truth. And when we see people that are not wanting to submit to truth, then we need to stand up to that and stand up and make sure that truth is taught in our fellowship, in our places of worship, that we would not be led astray by a few powerful or corrupt individuals who want to take people away from the truth. Because ultimately, if we allow ourselves to be taken away from the truth, we lose our fellowship. Isn't that sort of the point? We lose our fellowship with the church and with God, ultimately. Let's end in a prayer, and then we'll wrap it up. God, I ask that you please be with us as we strive for truth, that we would all be like Gaius and not Diotrephes, that we would submit ourselves to truth, that we would support those who teach truth, that we would endeavor to be partakers and fellow workers with those who are supporting truth. Please give us the wisdom and discernment as we try to decide who we support with our money, as we're thinking about missionaries in our situation, who we're supporting. Please give us discernment in that. Please give us the courage to stand up when people are corrupting our fellowship, when people are trying to take control for selfish reasons. God, please help us to be bold in that. We love you. We thank you for your word. We thank you for the encouragement that we find there. We ask you please be with Bev and Ralph and with Elmer's family and with all those who are hurting at this time. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, that is it for the series on John. So I don't know what we're doing next. We'll do something next. I don't know what. And that's it for us for today. Let me just check my phone and see if there's a text or anything. Of course, the church just sent out a call about Bev. So, yeah, that's it for us today. Thanks for being with us today. If you have any ideas about what you want to study next, let me know. If you want to have any ideas for next week's Daily Doses, let me know, and we will keep going. We hope to see some of you on Sunday, many of you on Sunday. We understand, of course, that many of you don't come, and that's understandable, right? We want people to do what's best for their situation and their family, but we always are encouraged by worshiping with one another. We ask you consider coming if it's at all possible. We love you guys. We miss you guys, and be safe. Have a good weekend. We'll see you later.